How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, leaving again on Sunday. Cade's got to have some level of UCL surgery,
Oh no, what happened?
proximal through tear. So we're hoping we can get a brace instead of a reconstruction. But yeah, that kind of manifested at the end of the fall season. So he's out for 26.
Dang,
Red
that's
shirt.
terrible.
Yeah. Yep. Well,
Sorry to hear
those
that.
things tend to be cumulative. But anyway, it's part of being a baseball player and a pitcher, I guess.
Yeah, no
Man,
doubt.
seems like you've been busy
I've been busy. Yeah, I'm busy. Man, it never slows down, but
with your fractional crusade,
I
which I think
know.
is great.
Dude,
Yeah.
I have more. It's so good. I mean, I just wrote a post about it and it blew up. And I decided I'll just create a business around it. And I'm having a blast. I'm actually coding now. So I'm building things that I haven't done in a long time. So,
I saw your post on vibe coding, and I don't even know what that is, but
well, I can do both. Like I actually can write a little Python and Java, but vibe coding basically allows anyone to code. And so basically you tell an AI script, and there's different systems and platforms out there, but you basically tell an AI script in natural language what you want to do. And then Grok and Chat GPT will do this for you, but there's also platforms out there where it will build websites and build tools and build AI agents for you. And instead of you having to be able to code yourself, you just tell it what to do. Now, the benefit of being able to code is you can go into the code and optimize it or change it or do things that if you don't know, it just probably takes a lot longer, but it's amazing. I mean, it's changed the game. So I was talking to a tech recruiter who told me even at the Ivy Leagues that first year coders are gone. So if you're looking for if you go to MIT or wherever and Stanford and you're a computer science person, software engineer, it's really hard to get a job right now. So because of AI and how it's sort of just changed, completely obliterated entry-level coding.
I'll have to check it out. I'm not a coder, but
You
my
can
wife
be
was.
though. You can be. I grew up in a coding family, so everyone codes.
So let's
What's
we say
happening
we
in the
don't
world of
like to
energy?
we say we don't like to talk politics, and I guess I'm going to hijack the run of show a little bit after watching yesterday's shenanigans unfold where, it was down to, I don't know, a vote on day 44 or thereabouts,
Mm-hmm.
which again was preceded by a 54-day recess in the House of Representatives. I know that's a tactical thing to put pressure on the Senate, but a recess before the Thanksgiving recess or before the holiday recess, we need to change the rules in Congress that if you're not in session debating and doing formal legislative voting, you got to be in Washington most of the time, crafting legislation, working with committees and caucuses. But, the speaker gets to call a vote or not call a vote whenever he wants. But, you send him off into the Netherlands and we have this FAA shutdown. What would have happened if we wouldn't have been able to get everybody there to vote on this thing? It's just another kick the can down the road.
Well, I got to defend Holly for a moment. That the good libertarian woman that she is, she loves a government that's not working because that means they're not spending our money. So I think in many ways it's a good thing. Now, we had this debate walking through the town of Nantucket. I'm like, okay, well, what does the FAA do? Privatize it. Great question, great point. So why don't, all these airports, most of them are run by municipal governments, but just privatize the damn thing. Boom. What do you need?
Yeah.
You don't need, why do you need the government involved?
I saw one of the pilots or airline associations representative talking about, there is the Department of Transportation has a $5 billion airways and airports fund of about $5 billion. Is there legislation in the meantime that can be passed to kind of stopgap this if we get into another shutdown, which we very well could at the end of January? And, this single spending kind of streamlined bill cadence that I think the Republican side of the House certainly wants to be on is something that is being wielded in the effort to sneak in a lot of other things that the Democrat minority wants. And I think they were a bit emboldened by the results of the off-year election, in those key areas. I will say, though, that, we can't be complacent about the remaining, 11 months and several days before the midterm elections. I saw one, and it was a Reuters Ipsos poll that 44% of Democrats are excited about the midterms, only 26% of Republicans are. And until we get this, messaging on affordability and some things that are broadly evident behind or other than gasoline prices being down, I think being asleep at the wheel is something that's going to, put the majority in peril as they approach the midterms. I don't know what you think.
One way
that.
that always, pork barreling screws everything up for sure. For all you real estate investors out there, there's a huge vote brewing about deleting property taxes from Florida, which would be awesome if you're a real estate investor. You better get in now. But the rhinos in the legislature in Florida are trying to throw so much shit in there that people don't want it. So, that's the problem. But I'm neither there nor here. So,
well, the early administration momentum behind cutting spending and DOGE and all that, that's, you don't hear much about that anymore.
Is that dead? Is DOGE dead?
Things creep back to, status quo or revert to type. And, I do think we're putting increasing pressure on the notion of having to grow out of this debt burden. But the kind of the meantime on this is we've got to have some wherewithal to do the spending cut. Because if you look at how well the extreme left did in the off-year elections, and now there are other things popping up. I don't know if you saw one of the candidates for Seattle mayor is a Democrat socialist. She's in her 40s, and her campaign's being funded by her parents. So,
that's so appropriate. So appropriate.
The pendulum swings here are, I think, unhelpful, but they're reality. And I just hope we don't have another kind of lurching and violent swing as we go through midterms heading into 28, because none of that is good for long-term policy, particularly energy, which we care about everything, but what we spend most of our time talking about is energy policy. And it's not just, Trump said last night, gasoline's $2.50 and going to $2.
Thank God oil and gas is not being run by the federal government. Otherwise, we'd be screwed. So, again, less government, better. All right, what's happening in the world of energy, Mark?
A few quick hit items, and then we'll get to our favorite climate topic annually. You did have Lukoil Gunvor withdrew its bid for Lukoil's international assets. That was after the administration, particularly the Treasury Secretary, made some fairly pointed comments that they were, quote unquote, a Kremlin puppet. And so you've got this next round of sanctions that the U.S. imposed are specific to Lukoil and Rosneft. The response to that, I think, has been more tangible, and we'll see. The Indians have backed off of commitments to buy Russian crude. We're not going to, allow offloading in certain ports for fear of sanctions in various countries around the world. But I think it was Anas al-Haji said, this puts the advantage a bit in China's court because, they're going to be buying Russian crude and probably at pretty attractive discounts. So, sanctions don't work by and large, but this round, motivating something like pulling of a multi-tens of billions dollars transaction by this Swiss trader to buy all these international assets pretty immediately after the deal was announced is at least something.
Well, I mean, so what's the stalemate here? Even the Swiss traders have limits on how much Russian drama they'll tolerate, for sure.
And you know a lot more about them than I do. So another item was Shell, who got an adverse ruling in its arbitration against Venture Global, filed a suit in New York Supreme Court. And I think they did that on the heels of BP getting a favorable decision. And so I just, I thought these international ICC arbitration board rulings are final, but I don't know what the argument is from a legal standpoint to overcome that.
I mean, when this is pretty common now, but when you lose an international court, you forum shop until you win. I mean, it's the legal equivalent of demanding a mulligan after shanking one into the woods. I mean, it doesn't. It's just I mean, that's why international courts are a little bit like who's going to enforce it, right? So
yeah,
they're suing the New York Supreme Court to challenge the arbitration ruling, which, I mean, we'll see what happens. But this is precedent, so
yeah. And
welcome to that's why being an attorney will always pay dividends, right?
The key claim, as I understand it, is that related to, remember that VG didn't deliver on those long-term contracts when we got into the energy crisis of 22, because you had such a blowout opportunity in the spot market. And they claimed, and apparently it was upheld in the BP case, that we're still going through commissioning and we're not obligated to deliver under those contracts until we get full commissioning of, I think it was the Plaquemine facility. And what Shell is saying is that not all of the evidence was presented by VG in the arbitration case. Why that, redress is through New York Supreme Court. But as you said, there's forum shopping that goes on in all of these things. So it's going to be interesting to see, how far this goes and whether we set another precedent where, the ICC arbitrator, which has been in the news this past year because they ruled on Exxon Chevron in Chevron's favor. And now you've got this sequence of arbitration decisions and cases. So anyway, that was the other kind of quick hit thing. All right, let's dive into COP30. We're down in the rainforest.
Your favorite topic. Let's go.
Well, you've got you've got the first ever UN climate conference, COP30, being hosted in the Amazon rainforest in Belém, Brazil, to which they built a 4-lane highway and felled tens of thousands of trees to do so. Irony number one. Irony number two is we've got Brazil hosting, and in his kickoff comments, Lula, the president of Brazil, suggested that we need to double down on the campaign to finally end climate denialism. Meanwhile, they're permitting drilling in the Amazon rainforest. And you've got, a typical logistical situation. There's 190 countries represented, 50,000 plus or minus delegates, and they don't have anywhere near enough hotel rooms. People are complaining about the availability of accommodations and the cost of everything, including accommodations. Not to mention, we've got the usual retinue of private jets flying in and out. So, this one is, I think, pretty interesting against the backdrop of everything that's unfolded since November of last year. The imminent withdrawal of the U.S. from the Paris Accords again, and the fact that you have no high-level U.S. federal government representation at the conference.
I mean, it's kind of like hosting a Save the Whales conference on a whaling ship. I mean, the irony is so thick, you could cut it with a chainsaw. Coincidentally, they used on those 100,000 trees that they cut down to build that damn highway. I mean, to me, it's like when you're at the end, it gets so silly. I mean, didn't Rome fall because the society got so corrupt? That's what's happening with COP30. It's just a joke. And developing nations are clamoring for more resilience funds. And carbon taxes got steamrolled through on day one. I mean, it's an annual shakedown where the poor countries demand money from the rich countries who got rich from using fossil fuels for low energy to power their nations, while China, the world's largest emitter of fossil fuels, watches and laughs. I mean, we keep talking about this over and over again, but the rich get richer, and the former rich, like us, United States, keeps giving to the poor. Just the poor keep changing seats. It's really it's just a grift.
In years past, they've had some difficulty in getting the consensus agenda set before, by day one. This year, what I understand is they kind of steamrolled the developing nations, clamor for some more sweeping, transformational, and certainly financial commitments. And it's, so we put together a more manageable agenda, get things kicked off, go through our, 2 weeks of platitudes and agreements with, really no binding commitments. And you go back to Brazil hosting, and the fact that the highest profile U.S. representative was Gavin Newsom. I don't know if you saw he was down there. In fact, some of the tribes stormed into broke down the barricades and created quite a bit of chaos in the center where Newsom was speaking, which I also think is ironic because, as we know, Newsom has said offshore drilling in California is dead on arrival, and California increasingly relies on imports from places like Ecuador and other kind of Amazonian rainforest rich countries. But, I also found it interesting that if you think about where Newsom has been in the last year or so, now that he sees, initially it was, I've got my podcast, I'm going up against Rogan, I'm going to have people on like Charlie Kirk, I'm going to wade into the pragmatist arena and do battle there, and hope I catch some of the positive vibe of that and make myself look more mainstream. But here he is down in Brazil, calling U.S. Climate policy a joke and kind of back to the old playbook of catastrophism when he's lost support even among his former catastrophist constituency, the leader of that, Bill Gates, making the comments and publishing his blog that he published a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that as well. So,
I mean, it kind of reminds me of something C.S. Lewis wrote. He said, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. COP30 is a tyranny with a green ribbon cutting down forests to save the planet. It is, I mean, equivalent. It's a wealth transfer scheme disguised as environmentalism. We know that. It is what it is.
well, Brazil could take real leadership here. They want to accelerate the transition. Be our guest, right?
I mean, yeah. Let's shut down all the offshore oil fields off Brazil. Let's just do that. Let's see what happens.
Let's see how much more political stability you get with a move like that. Lead through action and not words.
I mean, I think Daniel Yergin said it best, and I'm not quoting him, but his book. I mean, Brazil is the number one in the planet for suffering from the resource curse. They love spending money when they find resources, and they spend it right into massive inflation, and then they go bankrupt. They keep doing it. So when you read about the resource curse, Brazil's always like, this is the best country in the world to observe because they keep doing it. So Brazil's is ground zero for being a true idiot. So yeah, they can lead, but they're not going to, and we know. Nothing new here.
There's another sideshow here, and since Chuck's not on, I can talk about the IEA. They came out with their World Energy Outlook. Javier Blas wrote a piece in Bloomberg Opinion today, and basically what the IEA has said at a high level is, well, we don't see oil demand peaking anytime soon. Gas maybe never, and coal may reach a zenith. They use the word zenith in a reasonably termed period of time, which is a big change from where they've been for the last 5 years on, predicting peak fossil fuel demand before the end of this decade. And so you're losing kind of that messaging as well. I'd like to be a fly on the wall in the conversations that Executive Director Birol is having with Antonio Guterres. Is, hey man, you're jumping ship here. We're going to lose. We're going to lose the grift. And what Javier said in kind of the headline is, we need to make the discussion of oil and gas, or the issue of oil and gas or fossil fuels more broadly, not taboo in the global debate where it's been. He did characterize the, as journalists tend to do, or conventional wisdom or popular journalists tend to say, that, it's an addiction. And I think it starts with that negative characterization. Things like maybe less reliance on economic slowdown for getting the whole emissions and warming objective under better control. But I think reality has returned and smacked people in the face that, the data continues to suggest that this stuff's going to be around for a long time. And I was thinking about it, if you look at the last 20 years in the U.S., we have cut GHGs by 20% on a gross basis. And on a per capita basis, that's 25%. And the dominant factor in that is the substitution of natural gas for coal in the power sector.
100%.
That is that is points on the scoreboard. Europe's gone, the EU's gone a different way, the UK's gone a different way, and not made that, call it a bridge or an intermediate substitution. I don't believe it's a bridge. I think gas is the most attractive long-term fuel for the future for a number of reasons, not just power generation. But the politics are so polarized that, we can't accept the fact that there is an actual defined and evidence-based, what our emissions are down collectively, maybe in the West. I think it's on the order of, saw a number of like 10 to 12%. And I think that's over a 30-year time frame. And there's a lot of, gnashing of teeth that it needs to be 60% by 2050 to meet net zero still. And they're still talking that tune at COP. Well, if we got started 5-10 years ago and quit all this, this polarized political nonsense, and where it made economic sense to take out coal and replace it with gas, those numbers in terms of reduction would be a lot bigger. We proved it in a pretty meaningful example of a country of 330 million plus people.
But I think, Mark, if you look at, that was driven by economics. Sure, there were some emissions standards that forced the shutting down of coal plants, but natural gas economically is just a better option in many ways. So, because of the abundance of it. Now, I think emissions, in fact, we should probably do some homework here about what did government regulations do to transition coal to gas? Did that accelerate it? We can probably do an ROI analysis on it, but ultimately, when you look at countries besides Europe who makes decisions not based on their pocketbook but based on their feelings, look at Europe, look at Asia. The Chinese, they have such an abundance of coal, it makes sense, and why they're building coal. They don't have natural gas.
Yeah, India's the same way.
So that's why you're seeing the decisions that they make.
Right.
And so
you're not going to spend trillions of dollars in India to create a nationwide natural gas grid. Same in China, although I was surprised to see that China domestic production, I think, supplies like 58% of their annual consumption, which is a much bigger number than I thought. I just haven't been paying attention to their import versus domestic production trends. But they're kind of marching hard on all fronts as it relates to energy security, which is first for them. And I think we're getting back to that being first for us. And I'm cynical. I think they're happy to see the West continue to be distracted by ideological objectives as opposed to things like, what makes the most economic sense in creating layers of inefficient and ineffective or unreliable redundancy in power generation and not addressing things like high voltage transmission and distribution, which continues to be laggard. And those are the things that we ought to be working on in the West with the IEA's leadership from a data-led analysis and policy standpoint to, okay, now you've admitted that net zero by 2050 report in 2021 is, fantastic in kind of an absurd way. Let's look at the entire picture for the member countries of the IEA, which are Western countries, and figure this out from an integrated energy system standpoint. To your point, where there's an abundance and availability and a reliability of coal, countries are not going to flip the switch and burden their populace with just the inherent costs, the capital costs of building out new systems. Yeah, you're seeing a lot of solar being put in China and India, for example. But the hand they've been dealt from a coal standpoint, because coal does so much beyond generate power, it drives manufacturing because of its thermal energy advantage. Same with the U.S. and natural gas. We've got multifaceted utility out of natural gas. That's not only power generation, and so what you have is what you'll use. If you can do it at scale, and you have the economic incentive to choose one over the other.
I mean, it reminds me, like, especially, I mean, it's full circle, like Gavin Newsom being in Brazil because he's destroyed one of the most abundant states in the union. But it reminds me of a client I had once that he brought us in and really needed strategic help. And I'm like, this division, the one he started with, is basically every other division's paying for this one division of the company. So I recommend you fire the head guy and shut down the division. And being blunt, but being honest, he goes, but that's my brother-in-law, and I'm not going to do that. So I said, I just want to be clear. The other division heads know that they are paying to keep your brother-in-law employed and keep that division going. He said, yes. I was like, as long as you know what you're doing, then my job here is done. But that's what happens. If you look at incentives, we are paying like only and if you think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I can't believe as a publicly school educated kid learned something from Psychology 101, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, only when you're in self-actualization can you do stupid things like what we're doing. So at some point, it's all going to fail. Brazil, I don't even know where they are, but California is so dead. What if they were cut off from being a part of the union and we didn't pay for them anymore? They would turn around immediately. But a lot of these stupid decisions, the thing about the Chinese, which I'm not for dictatorships, but their dictatorship is making economic-based decisions to be the most dominant country in the world, focusing on low energy prices. I mean, that's all they're going to do. They're going to, lip sync to the Europeans who are crazy because they, wealth from the very beginning of time has continued to fuel that empire, a bunch of little empires, but eventually it's going to come crumbling down, and that's what we're saying.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before too. There's no air between industry and the military in China. That's why they build 300 ships to our one. In fact, they launched their largest aircraft carrier, I think yesterday or today. And their ability to align kind of the manufacturing sector with their strategic objectives militarily and politically is something that we ought to pay more attention to. And I think this is all part of that soup as we think about the game that they're playing relative to delivering commitments or pronouncements of like nationally defined contributions on emissions that they have. Just don't listen to what they say, watch what they do, that they have no intention of meeting by subordinating their industrial objectives to an ideological outcome.
I mean, so for those of you, look, 99% of the world are sheep. They're going to just follow because of multiple reasons, but that's just the way the world works. But when someone tells you something that doesn't make any financial sense to you, but they do it anyway, then there's theft involved. And in this case, that's what's happening, especially when you think about federal government. There's so much theft at the federal level. Think about it. I mean, I live in a small island and by the way, speaking of, I got my driver's license.
Awesome.
Massachusetts.
We were there.
We were there. But what's so funny is I got rejected because I couldn't prove, I didn't have the right documents to prove I lived here. So I had to go back and show records. I didn't have that. But there's so many illegals. And when I'm in there for the twice, there are illegals that are trying to get their residency, to get their driver's license. And surprisingly, the driver's license people rejected 3 people while I was sitting there, which I couldn't believe it, because a year ago, they were just like, just give me a piece of paper that says, handwritten, that says I live here. But what's interesting is I'm paying for these people. I'm literally watching and I'm paying for these people. And I see them and they freaking wreck their truck, their brand new F-250s into telephone poles because they're drunk. But there's no repercussions. But for most of us, especially those great people that work in energy and oil and gas, know that there's a great grift going on. This whole climate stuff is a ruse. And the fact that our Gen Z and Gen millennials believe that climate is religion, they've been sold a bill of goods. And COP30 is the great example of all of this.
Speaking of our industry, this is the closing part. Landman returns on Sunday, Paramount Plus. So hopefully we'll see a rapid fire series of Landman critiques and reviews with Chuck and his land bros. Also, we've both got big games. Yours is bigger, coming up on Saturday.
Can I say something? I'm going to tell you, I am so happy for the Aggies. I love it. I mean, you guys, I know our pride kicked you out of the Big 12, so you ran to the SEC and have been nothing. And now we come in and, of course, we're Texas. We're great. We're so good. And you know it. I know it. But I love the Aggies, and I agree with Lane over at Lane. I can't remember his last name, but I think Kippen. I think the Aggies should be number 1. And I hope to God you guys stay undefeated until the day after Thanksgiving when we whoop your ass, which we will.
What's the bet?
I mean, it's probably $100 in a naked run in public or something, but
or maybe on a BDE shortly after. Got to wear, the loser has to wear the other's gear.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I do not have any maroon. That's for sure.
Straight up. I'll send you some. So I sent my son-in-law after he's a Florida grad, after the Florida dismantling, I sent him the ugliest, he's an attorney, the ugliest, most obnoxious Texas A&M tie. It had Reveille on it. It had the water tower. It had the logo. And it was a dog's breakfast of tacky. And he's required at his office to show evidence that he worked for a full day.
Well, good luck. So nonetheless, man.
I'm nervously anticipating Saturday's game. We got South Carolina at home. And unlike in years past, when you get close to the top 4, we found a way, and it's usually on the road, to step in it. And it hasn't happened yet. Now, I got to tell you, watching the Missouri game last weekend, and one of my gripes for the past several years with my buddies who we kind of text live during A&M football games, is I saw more depth and balance than I've seen probably since I was in school, which is a long time ago. And that's been one of the key areas. And I miss, I had a misperception, and it was a couple of games. I think they had 65 yards in penalties. Early in the year, they had over 100 yards in penalties. And I'm ranting about this in the text thread, is that, what is the discipline breakdown? Because they had 3 offsides penalties spanning the second and third quarter over about a 10 minutes worth of play in some, fairly important moments in the game. Well, I went and looked. Out of 134 FBS teams, they are 121st in terms of penalty yardage. So they're one of the least penalized teams. And I guess my eyes kind of deceived me in terms of what I was seeing anecdotally, which was pretty interesting. So I'll quietly be happy about the relevance, but let's finish running the gauntlet because a lot can happen in these last 3 weeks.
No doubt. Well, good luck till Thanksgiving.
It's going to be fun.
And then the blood will come out. And then I have a tendency to get on Twitter, X, and rage text during Longhorn games. So it'll be fun to watch. You should be on. Well, let's all we should join let's do that. Channel. That'll be fun.
Actually, I'm going to be, my son turned 21 back in October, and we're visiting one of my daughters in Florida, and there's the whole family entourage going out for belated 21st birthday celebration. And I'm hoping the venues are festooned with televisions. Otherwise, I'm going to be watching on my phone on Friday night. It is a night game, I would assume.
I think so. It better be.
Schedule. Anyway,
awesome,
all right.
Man.
Well, this was fun. Good to see you. Let's catch up on your venture sometime soon. I want to
sounds good.
Ask some questions about it and hear more about it.
Cheers.
All right.
Over
Peace, everybody.